good evening, and welcome to our latest In Conversation from Exeter Library. And this evening, I'm delighted to be I'm delighted to welcome three wonderful authors: Sue Moorcroft, Philippa Ashley, and Bella Osbourne. And thank you to Becky at Avon for organising this event this evening. These events are free, but if you'd like to give a donation to Libraries Unlimited, which is the charity that runs the 54 libraries and mobile libraries in Devon and Torbay, there is a link in the chat. We are also posting to over 30 libraries across Devon and Torbay this evening, from Princetown to Pinhoe. And as I say hello to all the other libraries who are watching. And if you'd like to ask a question, please pop in the chat and I will ask the ladies. So firstly, we have the introductions. So Sue Moorcroft is a Sunday Times and international best-selling author and has reached the coveted #1 spot on the Amazon Kindle UK. She's won the Goldsborough Contemporary Romantic Novel Award, Reader's Best Romantic Novel Award, and the Katie Ford Bursary. Sue's love of novels and life are currently released by the publishing giant HarperCollins in the UK, US, and Canada, and other publishers around the world. Born in Germany to an army family, Sue spent I'm falling over my words tonight. Sue spent much of her time in Cyprus and Malta as a child and settled in Northamptonshire aged 10. Philippa Ashley studied English at Oxford before working as a copywriter and a journalist. Her first novel, Decent Exposure, won the Romantic Novelist Association Award, and Miranda's Mount, or Return to Castle Bay, won Best Ebook in the Festival of Romance Readers Award 2012. Scrolling down this one. As Pippa Croft, Philippa also writes the Oxford Blues series, which is published by Penguin. I'm quite interested about that one. She lives in the Staffordshire village with her husband and a grown-up daughter. When she's not writing, she loves falling off of surfboards and following Poldark around in a camper van. I think we'd all quite like to do that. And Bella Osbourne has been jotting down stories as far back as she can remember. Her first story, written when she was only 9, was about a thief who stole the crown jewels, and this sadly remains unpublished. However, undeterred, she continued to write for adults, and It Started at Sunset Cottage is her debut novel. She likes the humour between the darker moments of life and weaves them into her stories. Bella believes that writing your own story is really the best fun ever, closely followed by talking, eating chocolate, drinking fizz, and planning holidays, which all sound amazing. So good evening, ladies, and welcome to our In Conversation this evening. Thank you. So firstly, should we have a chat about your books? And I imagine that you've probably got them. I've got all of them on my Kindle, so I haven't got the nice covers. So if you've got them there, you can wave them and show them to the audience. So firstly, Sue, so your book Under an Italian Sun is set in sunny Umbria, and we could all do with some of that Italian vibes at the moment. Would you like to tell us a bit more about it?
Well, it's about Zia Lucia Costa Chalmers and how she came by that mouthful of a name. The book begins when she finds not one birth and death certificate for her mother, but 2, both dated at different times. And she's already made up her mind to try and find her previously unknown father, who she was always told was an Italian, and she has the colouring to match that. Mainly because she wants an Italian passport post-Brexit, having been made redundant and her boyfriend cheated on her. So her search takes her to Monte Libertà in Umbria, and a beautiful rocky plateau above a vineyard where someone else called Lucia Costa lives on one side and Piero lives on the other, and they're fighting to keep their home as a big conglomerate tries to move in and take over both their homes and the vineyard. It deals like I think both Bella and Philippa, it deals with some serious themes as well as the Sun and Orvieto Classico sort of themes: postpartum depression, suicide, trying to keep your home, quite serious illness, And there's quite a nice relationship in the past that comes to light as well, between one of her mothers and a man who was in love with her a long time ago.
Yeah, it's certainly got lots going on in there, hasn't it? So it's a great summer read.
Thank you.
Secondly, Bella, your book, The Promise of Summer, starts with a train journey from Sheffield.
It does, yeah. So Ruby is on a train going to London for a very important appointment, and she just she dashes for the train because there's all sorts of cancellations, and she panics a bit, having left loads of time. So she just jumps on the next train that's going to London, finds a seat and sits down and thinks, oh, that's great. And then a chap comes along and tells her that she's sat in his seat because he's booked it, and he has to sit in that seat because he likes to face in that direction and he likes to sit on the aisle. So she moves and like grumbles a bit. And then another chap comes on board, and he seemed really nice, and he chats to her, and he's got an engagement ring, and he's off to do this amazing proposal to his girlfriend at the top of the London Eye. And she's had some really loser boyfriends, so this sort of gives a little sprinkle of, oh, you know, is romance out there? You know, maybe it does exist. Maybe there are people like that are going to go out of their way for somebody. And then he borrows her phone because there's a problem with the proposal, and loads of people are getting on and off the train at the next station, and he gets caught that he's on the platform letting people on with her phone, and the train pulls away, and then she discovers the engagement ring. He's dropped it and he's left it behind. So she's then determined to return it and to save the day for this big proposal. But the chap across the aisle has other ideas and thinks that maybe she isn't that trustworthy to have such an expensive looking ring, and he feels that maybe he should be involved to help sort things out. So yeah, so their day is sort of chasing across London to try and reunite people with the ring, and then there's much more about that. It's also another side, because I always have a strong friendship in my stories, and Kim is the other main character, and she runs the florist that Ruby works in. So there's a lot about Kim as well and what's happening in her life. So yeah, that's a
great one.
Summer.
And Philippa, An Endless Cornish Summer. Like a lot of people are visiting Cornwall at the moment, and we all love a Cornish tale, don't we? So
yeah.
So what happens in An Endless Cornish Tale?
Well, it's basically about a woman who goes to Cornwall to find the man who saved her life. The idea was actually given to me by my daughter in like one sentence a couple of years ago. So I heard her say it, and it's the second time she's given me an idea like that, and I'm like, literally, yes. You know, I just knew that was. But then, of course, there's 100,000 words telling that story. So, yeah, it's about Rose, who's an archaeologist in Cambridge. And this isn't giving too much away. She's had a successful bone marrow transplant. And for one reason and another, she decides she's going to track down the person who donated the bone marrow and saved her life. But they don't really want to be found. It all sounds very unethical, but it makes sense. So she narrows it down using her research skills to one of two brothers in a Cornish village of Falford, which this is the first book in the 3-book series set in Falford. And then she goes to the village mainly to thank the person that saved her life, but she ends up becoming embroiled in the lives of the Morver brothers. It's one of those two, and getting kind of really involved in the life of the village. And alongside her quest to find who was her donor, like Bella, there's a strong friendship story as well. And I had a lot of fun writing that. It's about a woman, or a young woman, who runs a folklore shop called Cornish Magic, except she doesn't believe in the supernatural in any way. So she's running this folklore shop, and it's not doing very well. So she has quite a lot to contend with, including someone who's inspired by all the men who mansplain female experts on Twitter. That's the thing that was happening during the pandemic. So there's this character called Nigel, and he kind of represents all these men and he's bullying Goriel, and so I had a lot of fun with it alongside the really serious story. So, but that's part of what's in there.
Fantastic. I mean, they're all. I'm getting some feedback. All the books are really summary delights, aren't they? And they take the readers to Cornwall and Italy and to London. And places is quite an important factor in your books, isn't it? And do you sort of have to take yourself there when you're writing it? And are the places in your book sort of inspired by places that you visited? And so setting the scene for the reader is easier, because one of the things I've noticed from your books and your readers is that they find the sort of escapism to these other places really easily. So I don't imagine that is just happens.
Shall I begin with that?
Yeah.
I yes, very much like to visit wherever I'm going, and I consider it quite a perk of the job. Where do I want to go? I know I'll ask my editor if she wants a book set there. But when I was writing this, it was the beginning of the pandemic. But luckily for me, it was set in a setting I'd already used, and one where I visited every year for 7 years in a writing retreat. So I had a whole library of photos already of Perugia, Orvieto. There won't be photos of Monte Libertà because it only lives up here. And although it bears quite a resemblance to Orvieto actually. And I got an Italian friend, and so I asked her brainless questions. And when she didn't know the answer, she at least had the language and research skills to find them out for me. And so that's why I chose that particular setting this time. And my summer 2022 book is set in France, in an area that I've already visited, and again have a library of photos for.
Yeah, that's great. It's been so difficult, I imagine, the last couple of years for writers. And I know that other people that I've spoken to have said that some authors have found it difficult to write at all. So to be able to sort of, pull on what you know already. And Bella and Philippa, your books these two books are set in the UK. So I know that's not just because of lockdown, is it? That's just something that you tend to do. So Bella, do you sort of was the sort of the place import, obviously London sort of, and chasing around London as well is quite exciting, and there's a lot to sort of pull on, isn't there? So
yes, it always makes me laugh though. So when we do things like this, there's Sue's in her books always set in these magical places, or they're in Malta and Italy and France and all exotic, and Philippa's down there on the coast in Cornwall in these little bays. And where are mine set? Oh, Birmingham, Brighton, Northamptonshire. This one's mainly in Sheffield. I'm doing something wrong, guys. I need to get a map out, don't I? So I have no idea why this one's currently set in Sheffield. There is a trip to London early on, but it's mainly set in Sheffield, up the north. And it is important that you know bits about your location. So I'm no Sheffield. Do I know it very well? Not really, but Google Maps is my friend, and I know people in the area, and I have been, so I can find out the bits that I don't know and fill in those gaps. So yes, I really need to try harder on the exotic location front, I think.
Maybe like Orient Express or something next, or QE2 or something. And actually, I think people like familiar. People like to read books about their own sort of environment as well. I know Cornwall is obviously, being in Devon, and like Cornwall is obviously, you say like down on the coast, but actually people still like books set in their areas, don't they? So actually there's a lot of people in the north who'll be really happy that you set your book in the north.
Yeah, I was really pleased with the audio book. The narrator, I'm assuming she's northern. She has a lovely northern accent, and she's done it an absolute treat, and that's really lovely to hear that. And it's like, yeah, that's good. That's good.
And Philippa, yours, this one is set in Cornwall, and you have visited your other books are sort of around. You've done Cornwall, haven't you, before? So is Cornwall particularly a place that's fond for your heart?
I'm totally kind of in love with it, really. I mean, I wrote one at Christmas that was set in the Lake District. It's not just Cornwall. I love Devon as well, especially North Devon. I do like Britain, and I've got when we come to talking about the books we've been reading, apart from Bella's and Sue's, which I've read recently, I've got piles of non-fiction books and guidebooks about the landscape. I absolutely love. I'll watch anything on TV that's about the coast or British landscape. So I just like being out in the countryside. I'll do anything to get out of the house, really. But the coast, I find the coast incredibly evocative. And I know most of my books are set in Cornwall, but it's the same with North Devon. If I was writing about that sort of area, Lee Bay and Croydon, that Heartland, all that rugged setting, I think it becomes another character in the book, really. I mean, I've read Sue's book and I know her setting's another character in the book. And Bella set one in Birmingham in a
Wildflower Park
square, and that was a character as well. So I think you've got to love your setting to write the book. I don't know how important it is in other people's, but I have to have the setting first. And then an excuse to just escape, and we've needed that. Literally, we've needed to escape to those places. So
and I think
privileged.
I think it's come over really, from seeing reviews and people have said that sort of being able to go to different places when you're stuck indoors or you haven't been able to go out is even more important. And so you've enabled people to be able to travel when they haven't been able to travel, and that's a really great gift, isn't it, to be able to do that.
I think that's really worked for me as well, that while all around was unpleasant things, I went off in my head every day to Italy or Brighton. And so, you mentioned earlier that some authors haven't been able to write. That certainly wasn't me. I was very happy to plunge in and leave real life.
That's great, isn't it? I've got some questions coming in from the audience. I will fire off a few and then go on to my next question. But the comment from Mick, who said he loves all three of the books. Celia says she's eaten pizza in all of Bella's settings. And Judy says that she felt like she took a holiday to, is it you're gonna have to say it to me, Monte Libertà, when she read Under the Italian Sun, and she enjoyed the book very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So another question to you all is that you all write about life, and on all of these books sort of touch on various episodes that happen in life, whether it's moving to a new village, sort of chance encounters, trying to escape yourself and trying to find yourself. And lots of people, as I said, use your books to escape their own lives. And sometimes you've said, Sue, that yours have got a difficult subject in, and actually I know Philippa's has as well in this one. And quite often in sort of the genre of books that you're writing is that they do sort of have difficult moments in them. Is that more of a challenge when you're writing sort of ultimately an uplifting novel to sort of weave in those darker moments, or is it better to do that? Does it give you more to work with?
I think the latter. It gives you something to work with. You need to write about something, not just waffle about, I don't know, cupcakes. I'm sure there's been fantastic books written about cupcakes, but there's always a lot more in there, This book came about, it's a spark that's been in the back of my head for ages, because I went to a lunch of authors in Bedfordshire. And as I happened to be the last to arrive, I think out of 8 of us. And as I sat down, somebody said, "Mind the baby under the table." And I looked under the table and there was a little boy, really little, asleep in a car seat. And so one of my friends was his, well, probably still is, his aunt. And what had happened was her sister-in-law had got postpartum psychosis and couldn't look after the baby. And so she was looking after the baby in the short term. And I'd never heard of postpartum psychosis. Obviously, we hear about postpartum depression more. I had no idea what it was. I was absolutely astonished to hear that such a small number of the population have suffered from this awful condition. And I never knew, because I kind of in the succeeding years, didn't keep in touch with that friend. I never knew what happened to the baby. So I decided to write an ending. But I think that to write an uplifting book, for me, it has to have a happy ending.
Yeah.
And I think because I know I'm working towards that, and the end of this book is particularly emotional, I wrote one ending and realised it was based on a fallacy. So that wasn't very promising. And about 9 days before it was due in, the real ending came to me. And so I just worked all hours then to get it in, like at the 11th and half hour.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite satisfying from that point of view. But that's kind of the way that real issues come into, you know, they just come into my head, and I start thinking about them.
And Bella, what is that similar for you? Is that or?
Well, I think as I write romantic comedy, I think you need to have the dark and light. So I think it probably makes those comic moments more of a high because you've been through some of the lows with the character. So I think whilst it's a very overused word, journey, but I think to take that character on that journey is really important, and to make it feel real, because it needs to have that a realistic side as well. You know, life doesn't go smoothly, and we handle it as best we can. So I think I know I do, you know, even in my darkest times, I've always found something funny, probably very inappropriately, but I've still always found something funny. So I think, and I think that's probably what gets you through. So I think that's a lot of what gets my characters through.
Yeah, Philippa.
Well, I think we've all seen over the past 15 months a lot of the dark side of life. So I think I probably feel more comfortable writing that side of it after what we've been through, in a way, because I think it's more familiar to people, but we've also seen really uplifting stories and people helping out. So I think all our books are more relevant now than they've ever been. And I know Sue and Bella will say the same. I've never, ever had so many messages from the readers than over the past 15 months. Lovely messages saying we've helped them, you know, escape, given them solace. And I think you have to reflect real life to make people believe the story. You know, you want to sweep people along on that journey, as Bella says, with you, and without putting real emotion in, you know, raw emotion, then you're not going to do that. I want, the biggest compliment I can get is when people say, I thought it was real, I felt it was real. And yeah, that's what, making it real is my main aim, I think. I must admit, when I first wrote this with the premise of it, I did wonder if I could write something. It isn't that serious, actually. The beginning is a serious issue, but the rest of the book's not as serious as it sounds. And I didn't think I could handle it, but my editor picked it out of some suggestions I'd sent. He said, that one, write that one. So I had no choice then. I had to face up to it and try and deal with it.
I love reading the reviews of your book, and some of them how you got them through being furloughed, being at home. Others saying that, you know, they love the character and the humour and the wit, being able to escape to a hot country. So when you do the readers' opinions ever shape the books now? Obviously, you're all popular authors in your own right, and obviously when people are waiting for your next books to come out, do you feel there's more of a pressure now with being so popular to write the next one? I don't know who wants to go first.
Sue?
I find deadlines are a pressure. I write 2 books a year, so I have to think about that all the time, and be sure I'm kind of on schedule and discuss it with my editor if I'm not. But yeah, I do take some notice of reviews. Obviously, one only really wants to read all the fulsome praise, but not everybody likes every book. I don't like every book I read, so why would everybody like mine? But there are certain things, if a few people say the same thing about one book, then I'll definitely think about what they've said. and discuss that with my editor. Is this something we need to worry about? Setting is a really typical example. We talk quite a lot about where I'm going to set a book, and quite a few of my Christmas books are set in my village in Cambridgeshire called Middledip. And so we take, I think for 2 books, Helen said to me, please could we have an exotic setting and Middledip, because your readers seem roughly divided which they like. So we've had Sweden and Middledip and Switzerland and Middledip, but the book that comes out in October is just Middledip, because I just couldn't get anywhere, and I don't like to write about a country I haven't been to. I know some authors do it very successfully, but maybe I don't have enough between my ears to do it, but I like to have been to the place. So that one's just Middledip, but that's definitely something we listen to the readers and what they say. And what a lot of them have said, just to continue really with what Philippa was saying, is please don't write about COVID, which suited me down to the ground. You know, I've had it, didn't enjoy it, don't want to write about it, don't want to write about lockdown, don't want to read about it. And so that's definitely something where as soon as the readers started saying, please don't write about COVID, I said, right, you are.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I think I've read a few things about, you know, that, and I think it's maybe too soon because we're still in it, isn't it? I mean, maybe in years to come, it will be something that people want to, but I can't imagine that any of us are going to want to read about it anytime soon. Bella?
Probably not, because people often go, oh, I hope there's going to be a sequel to this, and I always read the review and go, sorry, no, because I've got another shiny idea over here, so I'm really sorry. No, I don't. So yeah, I've never been back to any of my books. The only one I've sort of is my Christmas book, was set in the village next door to the village that Willow Cottage was set in. So there was a couple of characters popped up in there, but it wasn't a sequel, so you can read them completely independently. So unfortunately, I don't really do that.
It's yeah, I don't think there's a right or a wrong, is there? It's just you know, it's everybody's choice.
I think there's so many different opinions as well, and if you tried to please everybody, then you'd mess the book up, really.
Yeah. And
you know, nobody has written a book that everybody liked. Not even the Bible. People disagree about it all the time. There isn't a book that everybody likes. So you've just got to write the book that's in your heart and go with the characters and what they tell you to do, and just hope that everybody likes it. It is hard when you get better and better reviews, and then you just think, oh dear Lord, the one I'm watching at the moment is an absolute pile of poo. But then it's okay, because we've got time and they've got a lovely editor, so I'm sure it'll be okay when it gets published.
It is, isn't it? And it's so subjective reading. You know, I've read books that people have absolutely raved about, and I'm just like, I don't know why you like that, because I just didn't get it. And I think, you know, and the same for other way around. I've read books that I really love and people are like, I really didn't like that. So yeah, it would be difficult, like you say, to please everybody. And Philippa?
Obviously, I'm sure we'd all say, I care deeply about what readers think, but I think you have to, it takes a long time. I remember some of the things happened at the very start of my career, when I'd go off and cry for a day, couldn't write for days. You have to not develop a thick skin, but get things in perspective, which is difficult for me because I rarely have things in perspective, as Bella will know. But you have to look at the majority, the overall reactions you're getting from the readers. Like I had on one of the books that's recently come out, someone complained it didn't mention COVID. Someone complained it mentioned Zoom calls, which reminded them of COVID. I mean, that was just, so you can't please all of the people all the time. I think my daughter told me, and I think it's Meg Cabot said, so like, you're not a $50 no, not everyone will like you, but you do care. You wouldn't be in the business if you didn't care, but you have to disappear off into your own world and be true to yourself as well. But on settings, the things Sue were talking about are quite practical things, really, not about changing what she writes. Just, I did a poll in my reader group asking people where they might like books to be set. So I've got another one about Cornwall at Christmas, another one about Cornwall in next summer, but then I'm going to go back to the Lake District next Christmas. Still here. So yeah, you do care, but I don't think you can be unduly influenced, and I'll probably think the three of us would probably say that.
Yeah,
that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds good. I've got some more questions coming in, so I'm going to fire off those so that we get everybody in. So Susan said she knows Sue invents some of her towns and villages, but do Bella and Philippa do the same? I think we sort of talked about that, but not in much detail. So if Bella or
yeah, so I've got a mix. So some of mine are made up places and some of them aren't. So Promise of Summer, it's real places. It's Sheffield and London, so that's real. Pebble Beach, so the Christmas one Family Christmas, that was Hembourne on the Hill, which is a made up village in the Cotswolds, which is next to Dumbleford, and also a made up village in the Cotswolds, which is in Willow Cottage. I made up Ottercombe Bay for Coming Home to Ottercombe Bay in Devon, so that's a made up one. Pebble Beach was in Brighton, very real. That took a lot of research. That also took me taking a trip to Brighton and just checking a couple of things and having a nice little jolly down there. But checking a couple of things meant I walked down the street and go, yes, so he's going to drive the car across there. No, he's not, because they're making it pedestrianised. So I had to go and accost a builder who was very confused about this strange woman going, so could I drive across? No, we're making it pedestrianised. So not going to be able to drive across. Oh my love. So then I got a map from the hotel and walked around Brighton, muttering to myself like a complete loon, going, oh, I could go that way. And then had to frantically change things. I think I was at line edit stage, had to frantically change things so that it actually worked in the book, because otherwise there will always be somebody that goes, well, that's not right, because you can't drive across there. No, but you could when I wrote the first draft. Yeah. And they went and did some building works. How inconsiderate. Shocking. So yes, so my locations are slightly different.
Philippa, I was interested in Falford. Is that sort of set on anywhere in Cornwall, or is that an imagined place?
It's a thinly disguised Helford.
Yeah,
I've got Falmouth in the. I describe Falmouth properly in the Christmas book, but I make. They are, in my mind, I am in a certain place, like the cover of this. This is off some of our holiday photos. It's got like a pub. It's a famous pub on the Helford River. And they do ask me to send off photos. But I've had to, there's a lot of the heroine's an archaeologist in this one, and she goes around a lot of famous sites. Some of them are in the real places, but some of them weren't convenient. So I think I moved that famous Cornish pool, Gosmary pool, onto the lizard just from. So I don't. And I wrote about the Isles of Scilly. Now I knew where I'd got in mind, but it's such a tiny place with only a couple of thousand people. There's no way I was going to name places, because that wouldn't be fair. People would be pinning it down. So I kind of mixed them up, really. So, basically, so I can do naughty things and do, you can't.
Poetic license. I would
like to have to be accurate in any part of my life, really. So mix it up a bit, but this is around the Helford estuary.
Nice, lovely place, really lovely place.
Can I just quickly mention this? This is the book that comes out on Thursday, which is actually a relaunch of my first ever book, Uphill All the Way, and it's been re-edited. But this house on the front, Philippa, you just put it in mind, is a house we lived in Malta. I was a child and I was an army kid, and I sent the photos just as Philippa described. So they've taken the loggia off, but that was my bedroom, and they've got a balcony outside.
That's really, because actually Celia was just asked a question about that, Sue. So she said, how did you find going back to your very first book to give it a wash and brush up, as she calls it? Has your writing changed?
Yes. I was shocked because it was my 8th book that I'd written, And the first one that got published, I published loads of short stories in a serial and some writing guides and stuff. And then this book got taken by an independent publisher called Transitor. And I thought I was the bee's knees. It was launched at the London Book Fair, and the people on the stand signed it for me, and I was in tears, and so what a wonderful day. So then it went out of print after 4 years, which was actually quite long-lived for a small publisher. And after a while, I put it up as an ebook, and I did nothing to it. I just bunged it up there and let it earn me some money, and it used to get decent reviews. And my agent then said one day, I wonder if Avon would be interested in reissuing that. I said, I don't know, let's find out. So they were, and they said, would you like to read through it and see if there's any changes you want to make? There were. It was really, you know, whenever anybody says to me, do you think you develop as a writer as time goes on? And my stock answer is, oh, I would like to think I continue developing, yes. Well, now I know that I do. It's exactly the same story, and I still like the story, but there was an enormous flashback right near the beginning of the book where you don't want it because it stops the action. So I took that out and made it a prologue, and I had the most unfortunate habit of writing passive sentences and explaining something 4 pages after it happened. So, and not explaining why anybody did anything, they just seemed to do it. So I've rectified those omissions, which has added like 9,000 or 10,000 words. And now I love it again, or like it again. I shouldn't love it again, that's big-headed. But it was a real experience. And there was a time where I sat there drumming my fingers on the desk and thought, I wonder if Avon would like the advance back and we'll just forget it.
Really?
I'm quite glad we didn't do that, because I am pleased with it again now. But it was, yeah, it was a bit of an experience, actually.
Mm. And Bella, isn't it? Your book was originally a 4-part story. That's the summer. My words muddled up. It was a 4-part story, and then it's been released. But did you have to change anything for that?
No. So since Willow Cottage, all my books are released as 4 digital parts. First of all, so they go out as 4-part works, and they're sort of 2 weeks apart. And then there's usually a few more weeks, and the whole thing comes out. So it gives readers a choice. So now I write them like that. So it's all one story, but there's key break points with little cliffhangers to hopefully keep people reading when they get to the end of each part. So that's it's written like that.
Because there was, I can't remember what author it was, but I know that she'd originally written the books as sort of short stories, and then she sort of amalgamated them. But whereas you write it as a book, but you just release it in sort of bits, in parts.
Yes, yeah. But it is written like that. So we don't sort of randomly pick a point. So it is written in 4 parts. Yeah, it's planned in 4 parts, and it's written to a structure. Yeah.
Were your sort of journeys into publishing, were they all sort of straightforward, and do you all write full time now? Is that your job? You write books, you know, sort of fully through the year? Is that, I know, Sue, you said you do 2 a year.
Yeah, I do know. I'm fond of saying it took me 20 years to be an overnight success. And that 20 years is from April 1996, when I sold my first short story in The People's Friend, to Christmas 2016, when I was #1 on Kindle. And I felt, okay, I can say I'm a writer now. So in between times, more than 200 short stories, a hatful of serials, 19 novella, between there must have been about 15 novels and a novella. And it wasn't until I joined Avon with The Christmas Promise that I made enough money from being a novelist to live on. Until then, if it was to do with writing, I would do it. I wrote columns for Writers Forum, I was their fiction judge, I appraised manuscripts, I wrote articles, short stories, serials, a writing guide, and courses for the London School of Journalism. So if it would stop me from getting a non-writing job, I would do it, basically. But now, yeah, I'm a full-time writer. I do some short stories and 2 or 3 parters for magazines, which is kind of a combination of, well, it's mainly for the promo. you know, that it complements what you've written. Sometimes it's about the book that's just come out, it's set in the same place, or a tangential character or something. But yeah, that's my job, and it takes me 50 or 60 hours a week.
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot.
I don't think I'm very quick.
And Philippa?
Like Sue, I wasn't able to become a full-time novelist until I started writing for Avon, probably around a similar time, sort of 2016, 17. But before then, I used to write professionally as well, but I used to write about nuts and bolts and air conditioning equipment because I was a copywriter. And living here in the Midlands, all the jobs I've got were trade, you know, jobs, websites and things, mostly industrial companies, but I've written about some really, really unusual things, defence systems, almost anything. And I also worked for the local paper on their county magazine. That was a lot of fun. We got to interview people, very, very badly paid, but tremendous fun, lovely colleagues. So I'd always written, but never any fiction until 2004, when I started off writing fanfic linked to a TV series, which is bizarre, but yeah. And I've written about 26 novels now.
Wow.
But it's the last 13 or 12 or 13 that have been pretty successful. And then at Christmas, I had my first Sunday Times bestseller, and my editor tweeted on Twitter, she said, "I've just had the pleasure of phoning an author to tell her 25th novel is a Sunday Times bestseller, so never give up."
That's amazing. That's
I'm a glutton for punishment. You've got to be a glutton for punishment. But Bella will have a different story now.
So I was a project manager in project management and program management for many, many years, and I always wrote as a hobby. And I just sort of start a story and, new shiny story, stop that story, write new shiny story, stop that story, other new shiny story. And it was only a hobby, so it was fine. And we had somebody join the team who was project management, but she was also a life coach. And some of my team went to see her, and when they came back, they were going, "Oh my goodness, Leslie's amazing, she's amazing." And they did lots of changes, which also included 2 of my staff leaving the company and going to do different things, which I don't think was the intention that we had of giving them a life coach. But there we go. But I did say, "Could you give me some tips so when you leave I can carry on?" Because it's clearly having some real impact with people. And she said, "I'll do a session with you." So I very arrogantly said, "There's nothing I want to change about my life. Very happy with my life, thank you. It's fine." So she said, no, we'll do a session. So she asked me various questions, and one of the things she hit on was the writing. And she said, "Look how animated you get. Why aren't you writing?" I said, "Well, I'm a mum now. I've not got time." She said, "You're a project manager. Make time." So she basically bullied me into it, pretty much. So, and then she coached me, and we set various goals of what I could do. And I joined the Romantic Novelists Association on their new writers scheme. And it was through them that I met a publisher. And as they say, the rest is history. So and what my coach made me do was set a goal, which was to finish a whole novel. So I only really did it to see if I could do it. So I just picked one of the part stories I'd written, to the one I thought had the best legs, and thought, right, let's see if I can make it into a novel. And I did.
It's so different, isn't it? And like I think you said it, Philippa, about you have to keep going, don't you, with it? There's very few people that get an overnight success. You have to be very sort of resilient, thick-skinned, all those sort of, and just keep going. And it's amazing. And I think anybody out there who's watching, who's wants to start that journey, it's a great journey to have, even if it may take you a little bit longer than you think it will be. And then one day you can have a book in the library, or lots of books in the libraries like you have. So I'm really aware of the time, but so what do you like to read in summer? And have you read anything lately that you'd recommend to people listening tonight?
So I've read quite a few, but my one of my favourites of 2021 is 8 Perfect Hours by Leah Louie. It's brilliant. So it's out now in ebook, currently only 99p. She's going to have to pay me commission, and it's out in paperback even on Thursday. And it's brilliant. She's at the top of her game, I think, as a writer. Some of her turns of phrase are just brilliant. Yeah, I wish I'd written it. It's very good, very clever. It starts off, without giving too much of the story away, people stuck in a traffic jam to the point where people are getting out of cars and looking around, and it's cold, and she, the heroine, ends up getting in the car with somebody nearby, and they chat for 8 hours, and it's just brilliant. And then he disappears, but obviously because they go their separate ways, but then little things about him and he keep popping up in her life. It's very good story. I liked it a lot, and it's got a nice balance of romance and comedy. It's good.
Sounds great. Philippa?
I've read Bella's and Sue's books, and I highly recommend them both.
Thank you.
One of the things that's helped me get me through both lockdowns, though, if crime novels, particularly Ellie Griffiths, which had an archaeologist heroine, and that's, I'm afraid, probably why I wanted an archaeologist heroine in a romance novel. But also Kate Rhodes's crime thriller set on the Isles of Scilly. I will order that in hardback. The day that comes out, I'll want it. And then I'll stalk Kate Rhodes and bow down on Twitter because I love them. She can have like a dozen potential suspects, and they all have a point of view. You don't know who it is until the end. There's a gorgeous detective. They're quite scary. But I know I couldn't write that. So I'm reading the book and I'm not thinking, how brilliant is this author? I couldn't do this. I'm just reading the story and being swept away and terrified. So I'm trying to remember, what was the last one? She set them on all.
Pulpit Rock.
Pulpit Rock.
Yeah, I had her on a few weeks ago, and she was amazing. She was
genius. Pulpit Rock. That's it. That was the last one.
Yeah.
So if you want to be scared, they're not sadistic though. They are brilliant, and I love the Isles of Scilly. So she actually uses real places, which
she does. Yeah.
So I highly recommend those if you want something different to romance.
She's lovely as well. She was really lovely to interview. And Sue, did we didn't?
No, I ducked out of this one, but I have go-to authors, Bella and Philippa, Jules Wake, who also writes as Chaplin, and I read their summer and winter. You know, as soon as I get Karen King, as soon as I get the email from a certain retail giant, I click on it and it just appears on my e-reader sometime later. So they just are must reads. I really have been enjoying some romantic suspense by Kendra Elliott and someone else, I can't bring her name to mind. Melinda Lee, both of whom Jules Wake introduced me to. Actually, I'm not quite as brave as Philippa. I don't like straight crime. I'm quite a wussy. But if I know that somewhere in the wings they're going to be having sex soon, I'm fine. I can deal with that.
You'd like it.
And at the moment, I've just begun a book yesterday, which I've really been enjoying, by Mary Jo Putney, which is a Regency set in 1812. And the premise is that a lady has to be married by age 25 in order to inherit. And there's no one she wants to marry. So she chooses a guy who's dying in hospital, a major, and now he's going to live. So I'm really interested to see how she brings that around. His sister found the right surgeon for him, and the whole scenario shifted. So that's really
great premise.
Quite brave, isn't it? I thought quite how it's really got me like, how obviously they're going to be in love in the end, but how he's below her station and all this, you know. So great stuff. Really enjoy it.
They all sound great. What's next for you all? Bella, I know you've got a book coming out early next year, and I think you said that just before we came on that it's actually out in ebook in a couple of weeks, called The Library, which is very exciting. Did you want to tell us a little bit about it?
I'd love to, yeah. So that's out on the 2nd of September in ebook, 1st of October in audio, and 6th of January in paperback. And it tells the story of Tom, who's 16 and doesn't have a very happy home life, and Maggie, who's 72 and lives on a small holding and favours things like yoga and martial arts. So she's not your average 72-year-old. And they're very different people, but they're brought together by their local library, and that's their point of contact. And through that, they become unlikely friends. And especially when their library is then at threat of closure, they then come together to see what they can do. But it's told from two perspectives, and it switches between Tom and Maggie, alternate chapters. And it's very much about, it's very character led. But yeah, so it isn't a rom-com. So my usual wonderful band of readers, it isn't a romantic comedy. It's much more of a book club read. There's a little bit of my wit in there because, you know, even bad stuff in life has some funny moments. But otherwise, yeah, it's a different book for me. So it's a step into a different genre, which is very scary. So if you have a book club and you'd like to give it a go, I'd be very, very happy for you to read it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Sounds great. I think, yeah, I've got it to read, so I'm really looking forward to it. And for you, Sue, what's you said you've got your first book coming out
on Thursday.
Yeah.
But that's not my major focus. I do hope that my regular readers will really enjoy it. But Under the Mistletoe comes out on the 28th of October in paperback, ebook and audio. And this was one where I did take a bit of a deep breath before I asked my editor at the time if she thought the idea was okay for my genre, because it does involve bullying, and it does involve what might be called horseplay that got out of hand. And as somebody said to me on Twitter, I'd want to know a lot more about whether there were any horses. It's a lot about familial love and how Grady will cope with knowing that his brother Mac did something, which Mac has always regretted. And Laurel comes back to the village to Middledit when she doesn't want to, and she stayed away from it because her sister needs her. So those two kind of parallel needs and wants, like, meet in the middle with the major conflict. And I am pleased how it ended up. But somebody read it for me very early on because she'd helped me. Laurel is an artist, and this author called Sue McDonough is also an artist, and she'd helped me with the research, and I asked her to read it for me to tell me what I'd got wrong. And she said, I really wondered how you were going to make this come right. And I said, so did I. I really got in the, am I going to be able, you know, have I written 95,000 words and I can't bring the end off? Because the messages in that book are quite, they give you food for thought. And it's just gone on NetGalley, and that's what people are saying, that this really gave me food for thought. So, phew.
Amazing. And Philippa, what's next for you?
Mine is a special Cornish Christmas out in November, and that's another book set in Falford. And one of the characters from here, she runs the Boatyard Cafe Beau, and she's into vintage, and she's in a group of rock and roll dancers in the village. And she has a rotten Christmas at the start of the book, and then we move on to the following Christmas. But in between that, she and two of her friends all go to visit a mysterious fortune teller called Madame Odette. Now, it's quite, I've got my own opinions on fortune telling, but sort of one of them's a skeptic, one of them wants to believe in it, and Beau's kind of has an open mind. And what Madame Odette says kind of changes their lives. But you also don't know a hope until Madame Odette, who Madame Odette is, until towards the end of the novel. So it's how, you know, are the things she tells them, are they predictions, or does it trigger them to change their lives? And you kind of see what happens at the end of the book. So that was quite a challenge, because I sent the first 10,000 words off to my editor, who's gone on maternity leave. She's, who's Madame Odette? Who's Madame Odette? I don't know. Bella would have known, but I hadn't decided. And she said, well, I'm loving this. I'm desperate to know Madame Odetti's. Just nail that down before you go any further. But yeah, I had. It's a lot of fun. There are serious issues in it, definitely, but it's quite a fun, and there's lots of dancing and rock and roll in it, and it's really kind of a yearning for what we didn't have last year. People getting together, going to events, dancing. So hopefully, I think when I was writing it, thinking, let's hope all that can happen. Yeah. So
I know that we've used the Christmas word twice in August, but actually, if when you do book reviews and reading the Christmas books, you know, they all start hitting, don't they, now, because you know they start being published and the reviewers are starting to review them. I've got a couple for September. So yeah, I mean, I love Christmas books, so I'm sorry, I can't apologize for liking them. So I'm really excited to hear what's coming next for all three of you. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Congratulations on all your books, and we really look forward to seeing what comes next, and I'm sure they'll be as successful as your others. If you'd like to order any of the books we've talked about this evening, you can order them from any library in Devon or Torbay, or there is a link for our friends at the Bookery in Crediton if you'd like to order any from there. And our next In Conversation is on next Wednesday, the 1st of September at 7 p.m. And we'll be going to America and with best-selling author Karen Rose. So all the details of our upcoming events are on our Facebook page. And if you enjoyed this event, please like our page and leave us some feedback. If you are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our page. Well, thank you, ladies. It's been an absolute joy to talk to you. And your books have kept us all going through lockdown and beyond, and I'm sure they will continue to do so. So thank you so much for joining us, and and hopefully we'll see you all again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having us.